listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joined will be Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing the new movie that just hit Netflix instant streaming, Cam, which is from, if you look on IMDb, the 2018 version. I'm not sure if there's other stuff called Cam. It's a pretty common abbreviation for a lot of things, but it is essentially about a modern-day cam girl and things going awry with the social media network element of it. And if you're not aware of what a cam girl is, it is essentially someone who does live web streaming, usually doing, some form of nudity or fetish type stuff for people that are in the chat room and pay real world money for them to do so. And it's something I think it's been around for a few years. I'm not sure when that started.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some documentaries that talked about some of this stuff a few years back. But this is just, going into what is the bad side of that. Now that I think of it,
It's been around for a long time. Even too, what was that show that Toni Collette was in and Brie Larson, United States of Terra?
Yeah.
One episode, Brie Larson's character, she's a teenager. She's maybe like 17. She gets into that on some degree. I don't know if it's like on a, say, professional site. Like, I don't know if the professional sites were around back then because, this film's set around a site that, like, that's what they do. There's a whole system, like tipping system and everything. But she was essentially like making a wish, like Amazon wish list or something. And like people were sending her stuff for like sitting on balloons or cakes or whatever, Like, so that was a whole plot line.
Hoboken Squat Cobbler.
That show was very good. I don't think I finished one of the, because I just bought one of the seasons before I had Showtime. But the first episode, it starts out, it's like, the premise is that Toni Collette is a mother with multiple personalities.
Yeah.
And then it deals with like a disorder. And I think Diablo Cody maybe wrote that.
Yeah, or she's involved with the show.
But yeah, so the first episode was like, you kind of had to like just stick with it because, there's some big personality swings and it's like, okay, this is what this is. But like as soon as you get into the show, like it's very, very well done. Really, really good. Great performances all around. Again, both of them alone are phenomenal actresses. So I recommend that show. Something
else I just thought about when we got to this episode just now is that the Kevin Smith segment from the horror anthology Holidays was kind of about cam girls. Not very good.
Well, and this one was written by a former cam girl or something.
Okay.
That's what I've been seeing on Twitter.
That makes sense because it was a Blumhouse tilt release. So I remember reading about this at some of the festivals. So I think the difference between Blumhouse tilt and Blumhouse is that Blumhouse is focused on movies going for theatrical releases, and Blumhouse tilt is going after like these different platformed releases. So maybe limited theater and direct to video or the streaming, because I think Creep, the Mark Duplass movie, the first one was a Blumhouse tilt movie that ended up going to Netflix. I think they kind of pushed up to Netflix and streaming platforms for these things that may not have the largest theatrical distribution possibilities, but are something that there is an audience for.
Yeah. Yeah, this definitely seems like a film, again, that maybe wouldn't have existed, otherwise. Or at least in this incarnation, because it has the budget it needs. Yeah, it looks good. It's...
Yeah, because too, like, the other thing is a lot of the Screen Life movies, so stuff like Unfriended and Unfriended 2 and Searching and all these movies. Searching I haven't seen yet, but I've heard really good things about it, so I do intend to check that out at some point. But a lot of these movies that take place on a screen, so your view is just like a laptop screen, you see chat windows pop up and Skype and all this stuff. Movies like that, I think... there's an argument to be made how effective they are, how much that can wear out on you after you've seen a certain number of them. This movie does not take that approach, thankfully. There are some elements that are kind of like the in-the-screen stuff, but it's mostly like 99% cinematic, which I prefer because, even though some of the stuff like this movie, it's more kind of made-up services, just for the purposes of what they're doing, I still think that may be a little bit more engaging. I don't know. I think sometimes
when it hurts the story. Sometimes when those screen things, they feel like it's just locked in too much. Like, okay, maybe it's not always the best way to service the story, but it's it's the gimmick or something, and it's like, okay, you know, you can break out of it when you need to.
Yeah,
like this does what it needs to do.
Yeah, because this movie, like I said, it's it's 99%. I think it's almost 100%. Anything they usually show is just kind of showing off screens or something.
Yeah.
So it's mostly cinematics. If you're worried that's what it is, it's not that. It's an actual cinematic movie. And yeah, so before we get into that, we can go through just some things we've been watching recently. Because of course we're recording this on November 25th, so the weekend after Thanksgiving and Black Friday, and the day before Cyber Monday, which is not where you engage in cyber sex with a bunch of strangers. It's
Not
where
yet,
you can
anyway.
you can purchase things. So did you get?
Seems like cam sites would have a huge special on Cyber Monday. You know, like you buy so many coins for a discount.
Yeah, you get to see two boobs for the
Yeah, I
price
mean,
of
the
one or
marketing's
something.
done for them. Did you ask if I saw anything?
I was gonna say, did you do any shopping like out in the real world?
Yeah, actually, I did. Well, you know, this weekend was my birthday's today.
Yeah,
Actually,
happy birthday!
Thank you. But so Friday we had my parents take our daughter and kind of just went out, and then we went to see Widows. But then we went to Barnes and Noble. It was next to wherever we had dinner, and they had that Criterion 50% sale.
Oh, okay.
And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm wondering if Filmstruck and Criterion going out has increased sales this time around. Like for me, it did a little bit because I'm
people
like,
are
well,
I can't just watch.
I can't just watch this on here. So I, you know, she got me. I picked it out, but she got me Silence of the Lambs Criterion because I definitely want to see a lot of the special features on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's a film, I love. I came to it later, like you saw it. I mean, you always talked about how much you loved it and stuff, and I came to it later and watched it several times since. And then, you know, just all the video essays and stuff on it are super fascinating. So it's like, as much as I love the film, it's also one of those films that I'm almost like just as much fascinated or even more fascinated in the style that is shot and the storytelling methods. You know what I mean? Just to try to get into Jonathan Demme's head.
The first movie I can think of too that has the kind of like looking straight to camera.
Yeah, that's what I'm
stuff
talking about. Like just and it works so well, and like I feel like there's just so much in that film to dissect. So I was like, this is a film I think I might have a cheap Blu-ray of it.
Yeah.
But it's like I want to check out all these special features because I don't think I may have actually watched some of those if that was on Filmstruck, because I do remember watching several, or I watched them on YouTube or something. But because it was 50% off, that was like $20. And then Blowout, which is another favorite of mine, that I'd probably watched all those Criterion Special Editions too when I rented it from Wild and Woolly, but I just hadn't owned that before. And then a few other things too, like some online stuff. Got Die Hard 4K that's coming soon, and Mission Impossible Fallout. Bought that digital. What about you? Did you buy anything?
So I did buy. I bought the PlayStation 4 bundle. That's the PS4 Slim and Spider-Man. It's not the Pro version, but I just did. I haven't had a system for a while because I've had for video editing, I've had a high-end PC that's good for gaming, that's higher quality than the current consoles. So I mostly just bought stuff on that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, Spider-Man and some of these other things are only on consoles. It might be more fun to sit downstairs in the couch and the recliner with the controller than my computer. So
I think Death Stranding
that.
might be exclusive too to PlayStation 4. So the new Kojima game.
Yeah.
So
because
that'll be a
that,
bonus
and
for
then
you.
I still haven't played Resident Evil 7, so I got that. And there's some other stuff. So I did that. I'm trying to think what else I got. I got some. I re-upped my subscription to Hulu because they had a deal where you can get it for 99 cents a month instead of $7.99 a month. So I canceled my subscription and restarted a new one.
That's smart.
I had to change the name on it though, because you can't have the same name and email address.
I don't know why we did, but right now it's my wife's. Normally it's mine.
Yeah.
It was something with that. I don't know if it was a deal or we decided to do a trial with hers.
Yeah.
Or maybe like it was just easy. Like she just signed up one day when I wasn't there. So that would be a good time for us to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. I think I saw like right before it ended.
Yeah.
Like the night or something, and then I did that real quick. Then, but yeah, I think I might have. I'm trying to remember what else I bought. I bought some just like small stuff here and there. I think we went to Kohl's and I got some shirts or something, but nothing. I restrained myself from buying some camera related equipment.
Yeah, I was wanting to buy a lot of. I did buy some equipment stuff for that's my day job, as you put it. And I bought a. eBay had like a or PayPal had a thing where it's like 2 years, no interest.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't really have that in the budget right now, but I bought a 17-inch basically production monitor for, for filmmaking and stuff. That'd be great for us. And then for me on some higher end stuff, I'd use it not all the time. And then a couple other things, and then a new router, which helps a lot.
I think I resisted the urge to get the Panasonic GH5S. So it's I think it was like $300 off, but I think it's been that for a while.
Yeah, that's what I saw, the GH5. It was like $500 off, and I'm like, I feel like it's been around $1,600, right?
Yeah, it's been like most of them have been around the same price at maybe like $100 less, but I was like, I'll just wait longer because that stuff will just go down in price. Now, if I got gear I haven't used that much anyway already, but yeah, so I spent
way too much, but
yeah, then we waited to go out to I think I got the shirts on Saturday. So we waited till Saturday to actually go anywhere. Went midday, not very busy anywhere. The restaurants are busier than the stores. And then did most of the stuff online. But you see like the videos of people getting punched, and I saw one of some Victoria's Secret people were having to jump on a table to get out of the way of.
I saw a former professor of mine from college. He was posting a Facebook video or some sort of Instagram video, something. Doing a live stream, and he was in Target, I guess on Thanksgiving at like 5 or 6 p.m. whenever they opened, and there was probably nobody in the store.
Well, I think a lot of things that have hurt
too early.
Well, a lot of that too, I think what's hurt him is a lot of the deals go online the day before, so it's really moved from Black Friday being the start of the shopping season to Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
and then even then,
I spent a lot like starting Monday.
Yeah, because I bought that PS4 Slim. I actually got that like Sunday night, I think, because like it was the Black Friday deal, but they let it go online at like midnight Sunday, the week of Thanksgiving. So I went ahead and like the second it went up, I ordered it and I got it.
Yeah,
but I always think like there's something like there really wasn't a Thanksgiving movie for us to do, because we mentioned Blood Rage last year, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a few like Blood Freak or some of these other ones, but there's nothing. There's not like a seminal Thanksgiving film.
We did Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know how the writer, I don't know who I was following, but the writer kept popping on my timeline and talking about
Thanksgiving.
No, of Cam.
Of Cam,
and then some other people. I saw some positive buzz on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe it's worth one of us checking out. And then we were like, well, let's just do it.
Well, and too, historically looking at our downloads and such, usually Netflix original movies that everybody can watch that has a subscription tend to do decent on podcast downloads, because it's something that everybody can see that's relatively new without having to, not that people like only watch things that we do for the podcast, but stuff they watch already, and then they're more apt to listen to the episode or download it or whatever. But yeah, so because of all that stuff, like I was super busy at work because I'm involved in some ongoing projects, had to be on site a bunch of different meetings and off-site meetings and all this stuff. So I don't really have a chance to watch anything aside from the main movie we're talking about, or the movie and then the one from the next podcast and stuff like that. But so you got to see the new Steve McQueen movie, Widows, right?
Yes, yeah. Co-written by Gillian Flynn, right?
Yeah, okay. So the writer of Gone Girl.
Yeah, Gone Girl. And then the Amy Adams HBO series.
Sharp Objects.
Which whenever we get HBO again, definitely.
Yeah, I need to do that soon. I keep forgetting because I need to watch Westworld season 2, the end of Vice Principal season 2, that and a few other
Silicon
things.
Valley, probably.
Silicon Valley, the new season.
Vice Principal season 2. I keep thinking about that a lot. Like, it's different than the first season, but I liked it a whole lot. I kind of want to rewatch that series again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have not seen a Steve McQueen film before. Like I told you, I have 12 Years a Slave, but I've always just been like, I'm going to be depressed when I watch that probably. So I didn't, it's one of those films, I bought it like around the time it came out and just have not watched it. But I really like Gone Girl. I love Sharp Objects. There was one other film too recently, I think, that she did or worked on, or maybe a series, but, so I was all up on this. I heard some people say it was like the types of film Michael Mann used to make, heist films. And it's, I can see that comparison for sure but it also feels like something like Goodfellas, in that it puts you inside a world. Goodfellas puts you in the side of world of, those, I guess, mobsters, gangsters of that era.
The good guys.
Yeah. And this,
or wise guys.
This puts you in a couple different shoes because it is multiple stories in Chicago, modern day Chicago. People living in trying to think of the way to put that, economically
Distressed neighborhoods, and but also the other side of politicians that are working that. So some complaints with the film I've heard is like it's juggling too many storylines, and I heard some people say I could use two less storylines, or this. For me, I was like all in on it. Like I enjoyed everybody's story, and it didn't feel for me it didn't feel bloated. And another thing I've heard is people say actually I wish it was longer, and I do feel like that it would have actually been a little bit better if it was longer. I heard somebody mention something about wanting to see his 3-hour cut. So I'm assuming either he was talking about that, or, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see that there was a 3-hour version of this film based on everything going on and knowing how much people cut from films. Because most movies start out 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, anyway. So I very, very much hope that there's a director's cut or something similar release that is that long, because I think it will give this film a whole new life. And not saying this is like, a bad film. Like I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But there's some of the maybe character motivations on some ends that don't, they don't kind of, they aren't satisfying as far as like understanding a character's motivations. When you understand a character one way, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why would they do this? Because everything I've seen from them before, they weren't really that person. But having said that, maybe you only are supposed to see some of the story through certain characters' perspectives. So they don't really know, you know what I mean? Maybe you're not supposed to know because some of the characters don't know why this happened. There's some turns in the films and some surprises. So I'm wondering if it's like, hey, that's the kind of the thing where stuff hits you in the face and you don't really get much resolution on knowing the reasons why.
Yeah.
But yeah, to kind of wrap it up, it's basically a film about a group of women who go to pull off a heist. That's like the simple premise.
Yeah, and they have to do it because of their things their husbands had done.
Yes. So, but along with that, it has, oh my God, Colin Farrell, who plays a politician. I'm sorry, I don't know his name. The other guy, another guy who is like,
let's see, Robert Duvall's in it.
Yes, yeah.
John Bernthal, Liam Neeson, and of course the stars like Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki. There's a lot of people in this. It's a pretty stacked cast.
It's an awesome cast. I'm trying to look.
Oh, Daniel Kaluuya, who was in Get Out,
yes,
and Black Panther.
So Brian Tyree Henry plays the opposite politician who's running against Colin Farrell, and then Daniel Kaluuya, he plays kind of his right hand man.
Yeah.
This is probably my favorite role I've seen him in. Get Out is a phenomenal film, but his purpose in that film, I think, is to play the everyman, the every black man.
Yeah.
He is a great character in it, but he is supposed to be just totally likable and actually right down the center and not too, he's not too sensitive in that film. And he gives people the benefit of the doubt. Like he's just very almost, I don't want to say innocent, but he is somebody you can't get mad at.
Yeah, well, I read too that people said that his character in this movie is his character after Get Out ended and decided he wasn't going to take anything anymore.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the thing that I thought about was this is like his Anton Chigurh almost.
Yeah,
and it's hard to I don't want to like,
because that's such an iconic role.
I don't want to stack somebody against that because that is such a big role.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it is that. Because he's not the main character, he's not the main. He is a main character, but there's many people as you see.
Just a badass, memorable role.
But he is a very bad person, and he is awesome at it in this. I've heard some complaints too. Some of it's a bit heavy-handed. I didn't think it was really too heavy-handed. Like it is a genre film. At the end of the day, it's a genre film.
Yeah.
So they kind of play some things and they say this is this character and this is this character, and I'm totally fine with that because at the end of the day, although it explores a lot of different themes, it's a heist film. That's as you can imagine. Spoiler alert. That's pretty much the climax of the film is a heist. Yeah. And And again, I know this may seem like spoilers, but a lot of heist films, a lot of the movie is them prepping the heist and talking about it. You know, it follows that format.
Yeah, well,
but along the way, you're taken into the lives of all these characters who have very different backgrounds, actually, even though it mainly takes place in this one neighborhood, seemingly. It is all these different characters, and it doesn't feel segmented. You know from the beginning, it's not like a surprise, but you see how all these stories fit into
how they come
this
together.
central story. Yeah, I mean, you see how, like, because everybody's related. It's not nothing where there's some twist and it's like there's some good turns in the film, but I'm saying it's not a twist where you turn out, oh, this is this guy's brother or something like that. You know what I mean? Where you're
Some
not,
melodramatic
or they hide
element.
something behind from you like that.
Yeah.
They do hide some good stuff, but it's nothing like that. But again, Steve McQueen, his direction is phenomenal. That's what I told you. I was like, man, he is a master behind the camera. Just I like the way he directs actors. Like, just it was such a satisfying film. But I also wish it was longer. You know, it was like, I think 2 hours and 6 minutes. Now, my wife was like, I could have done if it was a little bit shorter. But she was like that before we even saw it. Like, she is over seeing movies that are over 2 hours long.
Yeah.
But just because it takes up so much time of the day, you know, we have limited time now. But yeah, I highly recommend checking it out. I really hope there's like a director's cut, but even still, it's been like one of my favorite films of the year for sure.
Yeah.
And typically some very good films come out towards the end of the year because they try to push towards the Oscar buzz, you know?
Yeah.
That and Black Klansman were super satisfying recent watches for me.
Yeah, both movies I want to watch. Yeah. But yes, like I said, I didn't really get a chance to watch much of anything. So now moving to our discussion of Cam, the 2018 movie that is available via Netflix now. And my phone, I always forget the stupid Face ID lock stuff. Because Cam was directed by Daniel Goldhaber, who I think this is one of his first, director. So he directed some shorts. So a short in 2012, a short in 2013, and then this.
I think this film was handled very well in this direction.
Yeah.
You know, it's tonally, the film feels different than if you say a Blumhouse horror film. And again, we talked about it before. You've pointed out that like Blumhouse has had their hand in a lot of different things, maybe that you wouldn't even
necessarily think of, like Whiplash or something.
Yeah, but this doesn't feel like you wouldn't put this in a lineup or a double feature with something. I mean, it gets in that territory, but something like The Conjuring or Annabelle.
Yeah.
I mean, Annabelle, that's Warner Brothers. But, you know what I mean?
Like, even Insidious, or even Unfriended, even though there's some similar, the very tendrils and threads of what the movies are might be slightly similar, but only very slightly.
This feels like a more honest film in that you can see that it was written from somebody who has experience in this. Like, it feels more personal than some Blumhouse films, and it doesn't feel like it was born out of a creation of an ideal for a genre conceit. You know what I mean?
It's more of like a story than a concept.
Yes, yeah. It seems like the story came first, and some things they want to explore, and then some, I guess, some horror or some fears that maybe come behind her life.
Yeah. Let's see. So it was written. So the story back credit for the director, Daniel Goldhaber, Isa Mazzei, and Isabel Link Levy. And then it's written by credit to Isa Mazzei. So I'm not sure. I'm not really sure who all, what else they've written. But then it stars Madeline Brewer, who was on Handmaid's Tale, is one of the characters.
Okay, so she's the main character, or
so she was a tangential character in Handmaid's Tale, main character in this. In the movie, who is Alice or Lola? On Handmaid's Tale, her character was Janine, so the girl that was missing an eye. But in this movie, I thought she did a really good job. So basically, the premise from IMDb. Alice, an ambitious cam girl, wakes up one day to discover she's been replaced on her show with an exact replica of herself. So the main thing that caught my attention and made me interested even to watch this at all was in in addition to being something that came to Netflix, so it's no additional cost to me to watch this specifically.
Yes.
I had heard some of the early reviews out of festivals and things like that throw around the term Lynchian. I'm convinced at this point nobody knows what that means. Just because I think a lot of the things that they think of for Lynch don't translate to liking his work means you like this other thing. And even out of David Lynch's own films, just because you like one thing doesn't mean you like the other. So there's plenty of people who like the original run of Twin Peaks who hate everything else, and vice versa. So, like, I think I'd heard that term thrown around.
It didn't even come to mind.
And to me, watching this,
film.
I mean, because it's not a movie. So when you think of, and we'll keep spoilers for this until the end. We'll go, spoiler free, and then dip into spoilers at the end once we get to that section and announce that. But the movie itself, like, it didn't have like long stretches without dialogue. It didn't have really obscure visual elements that didn't have any context that you just kind of had to figure out. It didn't have anything like that.
And sometimes the characters in his films feel like just vestiges. I don't know if I'm using that word properly, but just they are objects that are used to extrapolate a feeling or something. You know what I mean? Something. They aren't necessarily traditionally
a fully formed literal
out
person.
Yeah, that you are supposed to
identify with.
Yeah, you're supposed to identify or feel like they've come from, I don't know, like I don't want to say a real place, but essentially, it's all.
Yeah.
A lot of it seemed like it came straight from his mind, not from a real place.
Yeah, as opposed to...
Yeah.
And that was just to, like...
This feels very grounded. And that's what I liked about the start of this film.
Because I was just laying that groundwork just in case you had seen those types of statements about it. That to me, this is a much more straightforward film. I mean, there are some elements where there's a little bit of mystery or intrigue to it and stuff that's not fully spelled out. But as a whole, it's not stylistically like a David Lynch thing or, trying to think of other similar movies. So you had a couple... was it 2 years ago? Neon Demon, that was about like the world of modeling. That movie was far more obscure than this one. This one's much more straightforward and grounded and kind of in character. There's dialogue, and you actually get to see interactions
I feel like
between...
it's just a good kind of a good story up until maybe I'm not saying it's bad, but up until maybe like a little bit past 2/3 of the film, whenever the mystery really, really kicks in.
Yeah.
And then and then I think it can lose a lot of people. But before that, it feels like a very straightforward, just kind of good little slight thriller in the beginning, maybe.
Because I think, too, that there are a lot of elements in the concept that make it where people could relate to it, even if they don't do cam girl type stuff or anything of that nature. Just being on social media, one, having someone steal your online identity, that you've built a lot to craft and create and to build up and work on, like that could be something that causes a lot of problems for people because, even like our stuff is not like we're a huge presence on social media or YouTube or whatever, but like, was a couple years ago, somebody leveled like a community guideline strike against our channel that got it taken down. Like the channel was deleted and I had to, for like 24 hours, I had to submit an appeal to it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, your channel doesn't violate any of these guidelines." Have no idea what what somebody tried to say we did.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the ones like harassment or hate speech, and it's like, well, none of our stuff has ever done that. But like for that,
it was probably Eli Roth.
Well, I think that was before we'd reviewed anything he had done, because that was back before he did the podcast.
Before Derek was on.
Yeah, so I think that, like, I'm not sure what they had to deal with, but regardless, on that specific instance, like, just the relate to that was just like, oh man, like all the stuff we've worked for is gone.
Well, yeah, I mean, this, obviously, being a cam girl, the main character of the film, all her livelihood is put into that.
That's like the job.
So if that gets, her, what supports her, if that gets put at risk or anything, that her whole world can come crumbling down. And that's kind of what this film is about. I don't, originally I assumed that, this is going to be about some stalker that comes after her that was obsessed with her, because I didn't watch a trailer or anything. And I just thought maybe it was that. I was like, well, if they said it's, I've heard some good things about it. It's worth a shot. It's not that at all, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, though, too, like, well, okay, so that could be some part of it, but it's not just a simple, what's the Mark Wahlberg movie, Fear, Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
It's not that. It's not just like crazy obsessed stalker
Yes,
coming
that's
after
what I thought
someone.
it was going to be.
It's not that standard, just very played out plot line. It goes into more obscure areas and touches on some different things. So I think that it's one of those things where I looked at some of the reviews after I watched the movie, and it looked like a lot of people were giving it pretty decent reviews, but the ones that really had a huge disconnect and hated the movie were mostly problems with where it went in the third act.
Yeah.
And two, so the movie, it's based on a cam girl, so like I didn't know what to expect necessarily in terms of the content of it. Like there's nothing in it that really mimics pornography. I mean, there's like some toplessness.
Mix it, but not.
Well, okay,
not extreme ways or anything, or gratuitous ways.
Yeah, because like there'll be somebody that's using a vibrator, but it shows like an upper face shot, so you don't see anything actually going on.
It's basically some topless shots, but it's not throughout the whole thing. You don't have to be embarrassed watching this.
It's nothing. It's nothing more.
If somebody walks in,
it's actually less extreme than Game of Thrones or Westworld.
Oh
I think.
Yeah.
So the concept, I had like not really read too much about it, and so I typically try to do that.
Oddly enough, none of it feels really sexual, and maybe it's because
you're
maybe
seeing it from the perspective of the character actually doing
exactly.
This.
Yeah, it just feels like, hey, this is work for her. And this is her job, and it does a thing where it doesn't really sexualize it. It seems like, I don't know.
Like it was one of the things for you as the audience watching the movie. Maybe some people will get off because people get off to anything. People get off to like bloody torture scenes with nudity.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But this movie itself is showing you
that
really
side of it.
Really the lameness or the sadness to that being a job.
Yeah.
Because like every job, if you were to break it down, like me going into an office or working here and going through a spreadsheet, just showing that as like, part of a narrative thing, it would look boring and sad.
There's so many articles about people who stream games and like how awful that is. And they've got to basically work like
streamers
100 hours a week
and
or whatever. And they have to always be on, because if they don't, then they'll lose followers. And that's exactly kind of, this kind of dips into that. Not too much.
Well, because you get to see too the element of her goal is to be in the top 50 of something, and then
top 50 ranking of the site,
and then having to deal with the emotion of that while doing stupid, ridiculous stuff, and then having emotional things go on and having to put a show on and keep it. So it touches on a lot of things at a lot of people's jobs, like not even anything related to cam girl. People who work in retail, you have to keep on a nice, happy face when you're dealing with customers. If, where I work in a business world, I have to at times listen to people give me incredibly unreasonable demands and then, politely deal with it. You can't just go on. So this is just showing you, something that could be considered quote unquote sex work, showing the mundane element to it and the, somebody having to figure out these goofy, dumb things to do to get people to tip them, and watching people make comments of stuff. They're like, really? That's what we do? Okay. So it's just, like you said, it's not really sexualized in the way it's presented. It's more presented as just like, here's her job in her life. And it's setting the stage for all of that.
Which I think is the most interesting part of the film, just because it's handled well,
And then there's parts of the film that deal with like what happens when all this stuff from this online persona crosses over into the real world. And I was like, oh, is this going to kind of be the focus? That's more of like a subplot that goes throughout. Yeah. And depending on how, like, we'll get to the spoilers at the end of the podcast in terms of how all of it plays out. May have gone a little bit differently than I thought, but just the concept of this whole online persona being hijacked or stolen, that is something that most people do worry about, because something that is something we're seeing now more so with James Gunn. Stuff you did online 10 years ago can come back to haunt you now. So it's, what are you putting out there? And stuff with like this cam girl phenomenon, which has been going on for a while. I'm not sure exactly how long. And online pornography or pornography in general has existed since there's been video recording. But
before that,
hand cave drawings of nudity. But like the thing is, like, what's the fallout from this stuff existing out there of people that live a life where this isn't promoted as what they do? There's all these interesting elements to that type of story. Because like social media, there are people who are, streamers or YouTubers. I'm sure a lot of people in their everyday life who don't participate actively in their videos and such probably aren't super aware of what they're doing. And they may not recognize, oh, well, my cousin or friend or neighbor is actually like a pretty big celebrity in some circles. And there's a lot of interesting elements to that. How much the movie touches on that. We'll go on in spoilers, but Like, that concept is interesting to me. And to me, this is, like you said, it was a little bit more grounded than some of the unfriended stuff where there's a ghost in the machine that's making people kill themselves, or there's all these hackers and there's, threatening people with ultimatums. And
I think the main character is interesting and likable and sympathetic, and all those things. That where sometimes the main character is just a person there to be terrorized, or
just a cipher.
So again, that's what I appreciated about it. I don't think it was totally a home run in the end, and it, I left the film with less of a good impression than it was like middle way through, but I didn't end up hating it or anything. I still liked it, and I get the idea. I think the ending could have been handled better, and there is a balance because some of it is ambiguous in some ways, but if you're caught up on that, then you will be very much turned off by it probably.
If you want the movie to wrap up everything in a nice little bow and explain from point A to point B to point C exactly what happened, then this isn't the type of story that's going to give you that. It lays enough out that you know what happened, but you don't know how or why.
Yeah.
And I think that causes a lot of problems for people. And two, ranking this as a quote unquote horror film, there are some elements in it that are scary or creepy, but I don't know that I would rate this as an outright horror film, because there's not really like a psycho stalker slasher type person or elements like that. It's more psychological terror and existential crisis type stuff.
But even still, it's different. I don't know. It still is, but it is very much different. Again, a lot of it feels like it is centered around a character, and that's the point of it. And then it brings in the kind of the terror of that character, and it's a lot of mystery too. I think that's a big hook to it is the mystery behind what's happening and why. Yeah,
and two, this is a movie that I think that the Netflix release strategy for it was the way to go, because I think this is the type of movie, because I've read reviews for a lot of stuff recently, and it's funny the way the initial expectations change how people really think about a movie. And somebody going to a theater and spending $20 to get a ticket and like a drink or something, and to sit down and spending 2.5 hours of your time like driving out to the theater, driving back, watching the movie, that does make the expectation change versus watching it at home on streaming as part of your Netflix subscription or paying to rent it. So all of that does change the perception of it. And there's some movies, I think, if you strip away some of these heightened expectations in terms of just, this needs to be the end-all, be-all experience, which is why the big-budget superhero films and stuff are so popular. People are a lot more able just to watch something and let it wash over them and enjoy it for what it is and what it was doing. And this is a movie where I think it would thrive in that environment versus one where you have a bunch of expectations saddled on it, where you're saying, I want as much visual and audio stimulation entertainment as Avengers Infinity War gave me in this movie. Or
like my wife said, when we went to see Widows, she was like, it's been a long time since I went to the theater and seen a really good movie, because we walked out a lot of them. She's like, it's okay. It was fine. But because we don't go as much, and she really doesn't go as much, it matters now. It's like, okay, when I go to the movies, I want to see something really good because I'm spending all this time. My time is limited,
Yeah.
So it is definitely one of those things where if you were spending, Derek always complains, like, if I've got to spend $22 to see this movie and I can buy it for, if Derek would have spent $22 on this film, he probably would have been the type that walked out very angry.
Yeah, because I think, fortunately, there's the element of that, too. Movies in general, like MoviePass. During the period of time I had MoviePass before I allowed them to give me a prorated return and get out of it, because they were just, at the end of it, when I stopped using it, you could barely get any movie runtimes at all, anywhere.
Is that still active at all?
Right? I think it still exists, but I think it's just gotten pared way down. But I saw Unfriended Dark Web just because I had MoviePass. If I had to pay to see it, I would not have gone to see it. And that was one where, going in knowing that I didn't have to pay out of pocket, it was included as some subscription fee that I had, and it was just my time going out there, I wasn't as concerned with some of this stuff as I would have been if I had paid $20-something. This is a movie, I think, this is a more satisfying movie in my opinion than Unfriended Dark Web, because like the screen life stuff where it's from the perspective of phone or tablet or laptop or computer screen, that is effective enough in doses. But I think sometimes you really stretch credibility that people would keep Skype chat. Because maybe it's just different. I mean, there have been times where I was with a group of friends and we did video chat with someone. Because I think we've done that for like fantasy football drafts or like one of my friends had moved to a different city. When he first moved there, hadn't met a ton of people there. So like when we were hanging out, we would just Skype or Google chat or whatever him in. Because everybody was hanging out drinking and stuff. Like a few times like that, but we didn't really get together and have like sustained parties or groups of people that would get together in video chat, especially when people lived in the same city. Because then like Unfriended, some of the people lived in the same area, and then there was a few that lived elsewhere. But as opposed to this movie, it's pretty much all cinematically told in the real, like in a location, and you follow a character from one place to another. To me, that just grounds it a little bit more. I mean, maybe it works the opposite for some people. Because when you show everything from the perspective of a computer screen, anything that is not a real interface or not a real app stands out big time.
Yeah.
And like was it an Unfriended Dark Web, like accessing the dark web, the portal for that was kind of ridiculous because it kind of looked like with the old like Windows 95 screensavers where it's going through a castle or something. It's like going down. It's essentially like going down like the River Styx or something.
Yeah.
So it's something like that. I mean, so that kind of takes you out of it. Or when they have these really like Law and Order SVU, they have all the fake websites and services and stuff. So that takes you out of it. If there's anything that's inauthentic, as opposed to if you're a theatrical movie and you're showing the screen and you only show a few things, then if something's not a real service, it's not as big of a deal because you're not focused in on that perspective of it. So I think this movie as a Screen Life movie would have not been as good at all.
No.
I think the way it was done was the way to do it. And like, trying to think of comparable movies, because like recently, not that comparing the quality or the content whatsoever, but seeing Suspiria, which is, about female dancers, and seeing the different movies that are kind of from women's perspective. This kind of follows in that tradition because it's pretty much all from the perspective of a young woman, and then the only real male characters that come in are peripheral, like her brother, different people out in the real world. They're only in there for a small amount of time, and it's from mostly the female perspective. And so I think that's in a way to approach it. It's not like showgirls exploitation type stuff. And there's not a pole sex scene where they're acting like dolphins or something.
Yeah.
But
in some ways, that's more Lynchian than this.
Yeah, I mean, and two, like,
and then it just seems like it was made by somebody from another planet at times. Again, I appreciate that film though.
Well, and two, at points in this movie, there's parts where like a character will scroll through and see what some of the videos are that are on these cam sites, and some of that's kind of ridiculous and goofy in the things that are being done. But the thing is, like, I'm sure that exact type of thing was probably done somewhere else, and they used that, like, during researching for this movie. You're like, oh, okay, well, somebody actually literally did this.
Well, I'm sure if she was a former cam girl, too, one of the writers, like, they had, they're like, hey, this. Well, and I've seen people, too, that not even are cam girls, that will post on Facebook. It's like, oh, hey, I have this Amazon wish list. If somebody wants to buy me something, I might send you a video of this. So there's all kinds of this kind of transactional communication stuff that occurs online. And, this movie taps into some of it, but it's more about really the fear of losing your online identity. And two, like, something that in real life I've had issues with. Like we said, like on our YouTube channel, I think that was like 3 years ago when it got taken down for a day. There's no 1-800 number to call. There's no person you can call and talk to. You just have to go and fill out an online form and submit a entry and hope it gets responded to. That's the same with like Facebook and Gmail and a lot of these services. There's not a real person you can call. Now, in this case, it's about a specific service where there is a customer service, but they're just as about as useful as sending an email. Because recently I had a package delivered by Amazon. And it was fine, luckily, but the person just threw it to my porch from the sidewalk. And it was a camera lens. Luckily, it was packaged well enough it wasn't damaged. But I was like, that could have broken this lens, and it would have been on me to prove it. So I was trying to let Amazon know, just like, hey, this delivery person did this. If you can have them trained or coached a little bit better in the future, they don't do that. And it took me like forever to actually be able to get in contact with the person. Right. eBay had a percentage off, and I don't know if I messed it up where I said it also had that 2 years no interest.
Yeah.
It's like I could have I think I could only do one or the other, and I don't think I realized that because they had like 15% off or something or whatever. It was basically $100 off if was the most you get off if you spent like $666 or something. And I think I may have not noticed that there was an option for either or. I just thought, I could get 2 years no interest and $100 off.
Yeah.
But whenever I did it, I realized I don't think I got that $100 off, and I just would have like paid for it, out of pocket.
Yeah.
If I would have realized that. But I tried to like find a phone number for eBay because it had just happened. I was going to call them right away, and people were like, "Yeah, there's basically no phone number for eBay." and they're like the best way is, oddly enough, Twitter. They said is to go on like Ask eBay or something. So I just haven't done that.
Usually a shit show.
Yeah, but yeah, when there's not a brick and mortar place you can walk into and yell at the manager.
When the reality of this stuff is when you're dealing with an online persona where once it's gone, or once it's taken over, like. There's stuff like that where that's incredibly frustrating and it feels violating, and that's not even if it's not your livelihood or business, having your social media presence stolen could be a big deal. And
it also deals with the vulnerability of the type of work she's doing and the way some people perceive it.
Yeah,
even just her. I won't dig into who, but how it is maybe looked down upon, so she is not getting help when she should be.
The other thing is, so just imagine the idea of somebody steals your online persona and then takes things further with it than you ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen plenty of stuff in the news where somebody gets fired over a tweet or a Facebook post, or so just imagine somebody taking control of your account and then doing stuff that's not what you would do. And then it looks like you're doing it.
I love when like politicians or somebody has it was Twitter, and they're like,
intern.
my kid got on my account and was
because like when Ted Cruz, his Twitter account had liked some porn post, and he's like, it was an intern, they've since been disciplined. It's
yeah, that's stuff. I love that. It's my
when
favorite.
Anthony Weiner was sending pictures of himself like shirtless to people and stuff. So there's all those things, but so the movie does touch on some of that stuff in an interesting way.
But it touches on them all. But
it's not focused on.
It doesn't leave you thinking about anything big like that. Like
it's mostly if you take anything to it yourself.
Yeah, it's not. I'm saying it's broad strokes, but none of that is kind of the central theme aside from the identity stuff and I guess her drive and like any other job, like you said, like her passion for basically kind of what is her art,
and wanting to get to the top.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the main thing, but the other ones, so were these screenwriters, was this pretty much their first thing?
I have to look.
All said and told, I mean, first time feature film director seemingly, is based on credits. Like at the end of the day, I think they all did a great job as far as writing and directing and stuff, but you could have seen how this film,
Let's see. So in the story back credits, Isabel Link Levy was also involved on the crews of stuff like Swiss Army Man and Sleeping with Other People and Demolition. So some other movies that are out there. So, and it looked like it was also a producer on some of the director short films. But, like a crew that's on the greener side of, like big movies. It's not...
taking that in consideration, I think they did a really good job, but you could see how some of these things may have been mined a little bit more but it's hard to say. It's hard to say, hey, they could have done this better. Although I appreciated those moments in the film when they happened, they were kind of just quick moments and they passed by.
Because it's very easy, and a lot of times it's hard not to review a movie for like, here's what I wish it was, and reviewing based on that, and you're just reviewing it for what it is. And in terms of what this movie is, I think it's a movie that touches on enough topics that can make you think, or there's a lot more material there, a lot more meat on the bone if they chose to go in the directions, but they didn't. And the way they go towards the end kind of leaves you with more of a ambiguous ending that's more thematic, and it's more about the themes, and it's more about the metaphor than it is about the actual what happened. So if that's the type of thing that is going to turn somebody off, but like cinematography was great, the acting performances were great. Like you said, I came away thinking, based on the subject matter, they did do a good job of grounding it and not being this exploitation deal just to get people to watch because of nudity. It was more of that was kind of in the background, and you didn't even notice as much that it was going on.
It just happened to be about somebody who had this profession and that story based around this, you know.
Because not that I'm against exploitation films in general. It's just in the modern era, I've gotten so tired, and this is, not a tiny local budget movie, but I've gotten so tired of the movies that just sell these nothing concepts on, well, here's a little bit of gore, here's a little bit of TNA. The fact that none of the story connects, maybe people just, they'll look at the boobs. We won't.
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, they're selling it to that audience that wants the sex comedy with heavy on the sex or at least nudity.
And I'm fine with whatever if it works in context and in support of the story. This is a movie that's more, everything is more in support of the story than just some exploitation type. Look at me. Yeah, like technically everything was great. Just, I wish there was a few directions I think they could have gone a little bit more into that to me would have been a little bit more interesting or fulfilling or entertaining than what they did do.
I'm very interested to see the career path of all these involved now. And to see what they would get, because Mike Flanagan, was he the one that did Hush?
Yeah.
You could see why he got,
because he had done
Ouija 2. I guess some of those guys.
Because he had done that movie Absentia, and then he had done Hush and some other stuff in Ouija Origin of Evil and Gerald's Game and Haunting in Hill House.
I mean, you could see his career path, like you could predict that, if he continued to get, I guess, bigger jobs. This, I don't know what path they could go. You know what I mean? They could go more of the genre heavy. They could go the opposite direction too.
Well, and two, so something I would say, I was trying to think of maybe thematically could be similar-ish or in terms of overall feeling. So Starry Eyes, the movie that came out a couple years ago.
I've been meaning to see that, and I've just have not.
And that's the directors of that are doing the new Pet Cemetery, right?
Yeah.
So I think that this could be a trajectory more similar to that, because I think this movie is comparable, not in terms of content, just the feeling I left both of them with. Just kind of like a young person who's wanting to get up their career and their game, and what it takes to do that, and what happens if somebody else kind of takes something from you. So both movies have that very general thread between them that are similar, but the overall feeling I came away from both movies was similar. So I think that if you like this movie, go back and watch Starry Eyes if you haven't, because that's a movie that I think you might be up your alley. But I guess we can kind of get into our final thoughts on this before we go into the spoilers. If you were to give this a score out of 10, where would you land on this?
Well, it's hard to... Unfortunately, the ending, it hinges so much as far as my impression of it on that ending, because it is the end of the film. It's the last thing you walk away with. So it'll be good to talk about that in the spoilers, but I didn't hate the ending, but I just, it was over with. And I'm like, that was pretty good, but we were very intrigued throughout most of the film. And even she missed the first part of it, and she came in, had to watch it while I was watching our daughter, and daughter was thankfully behaving well enough to we can kind of pretty much pay attention to it pretty well. But my wife, I kept stopping it if she had to go upstairs or whatever, because she got intrigued by it, and she got drawn into it, and she missed the beginning of the film really. So I think that speaks a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when you got some other distraction in the room and you're still wanting to watch this thing when you haven't even seen the beginning. I mean, I don't know where I would rate this. I would say somewhere around maybe a 7-ish. Possibly.
Yeah, because let's see, looking at IMDb, the average score is a 6.0 out of 10, and the Metacritic score of 70. So I think that's ballpark, where I would probably put it too. Around a 6.5, 7, because it's an
I wouldn't want to go to an 8, and it's
because it's one of those things where it's good work for everybody. It shows promise. In and of itself, it's not self-actualized enough to think to be an instant classic.
No, yeah.
But I think it is something that if you have Netflix and just the basic premise of this type of stuff intrigues you, because it's not so much about, Facebook or anything like that. It's more just about, what would somebody do if their online identity was threatened? And that was how they made their living. And in today's world, more and more people, because was it in China, they have the social currency settings where, if you have bad social currency, you might not be able to rent an apartment or do all these things you need to do to live. So there's a lot of stuff that's scary implications for this type of stuff. And there's Black Mirror's had episodes kind of like this, like the Bryce Dallas Howard episode was about rankings and ratings.
I just saw something that,
because this could be Black Mirror episode.
I did not look at the article. I don't remember the source, but somebody was, had a tweet. It said something about China's a nightmare, and then they dot, and it was an article about the U.S., I guess it was like contemplating rejecting citizenship based on your credit score. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's some religions that don't believe in credit. You know what I mean? Is it? I'm trying to think. Is it Islamic?
I'm not sure. about that.
There's a very large group that does not believe in credit. So they, my wife knows somebody, and they were talking about this, and they were like, some phone bill or something they had, and it was outrageous because they were making a long distance. They didn't realize or something. They weren't made aware, and they were like, "No, I'm not paying it." And my wife was like, "What about your credit?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "We don't believe in credit, so I don't care what my credit score is." He's like, "I'm not paying it." You know what I mean? Like, so again, that's like
if you got massive amounts of cash, I guess that's okay.
But that's a really messed up thing. We're going to get into that. I don't know the validity of it, but you can see that even just targeting that demographic, being like, okay, they're not allowed in because.
Well, just in general, if you start using all these online metrics to decide things, I mean, so this episode, or that movie was just, kind of preying on those fears. It didn't go as in depth and much as you might in a, different context. But yeah, so I guess now, before moving to spoilers, if you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor. Leave a review that helps other people find the podcast. If you leave a new review, I'll try to check it soon. And if you leave one, we can read it on the podcast. Because we're recording 2 back-to-back, so it'll be after the next one if you do. But that'll help us out. We always enjoy seeing the comments and feedback on YouTube because we get some good commentary there. You can also find all the stuff we're doing at housevideostore.com. Find links to all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all those places. Make sure to follow us on all of those on Facebook and Instagram specifically because we post what's going on the podcast and pictures of behind the scenes stuff from our projects and things we're working on. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
I'm at Blevin Sean.
And now we'll go into spoilers for Cam. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can check it out on Netflix, watch Instant, but we will be discussing spoilers for it. So yeah, we talked a lot about... I think we touched on enough of like what happens in the early part of the movies in terms of the content.
Sure.
The main thing is just it hinges on what is actually happening. So the girl's Lola or Alice, she gets locked out of her account, and then for a while she has the account code so she can talk to the customer service, but they can't reset the password and stuff for her. And then the account code gets changed, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And then she finds out that the website she's on, the top cam girl, supposedly died in a car accident or some type of accident a few years prior. And the version of her that's in the webcam looks identical to her, sounds identical to her. And then she sets up a scenario where, because she does so she goes on a date with one of her supporters who talks about where he went out and actually met that one girl, the top cam girl, out in real world, and he talked about the state she was in and where they were at. So the main character Alice is able to look all that stuff up and then find like a story about this girl dying. And then she goes to the guy that's kind of been of a stalker of her that sees her out in the real world and who is like being very annoying and texting her and calling her and all this stuff. And then finds out from him that this happens to some profiles, and you can so it's not really clear what's happening. Is this kind of like a Tulpa type deal where it's like a double that's taking over,
I think so.
Mirror image?
What I kind of saw, because I looked at something briefly too, I think it's basically some sort of algorithm that
or just like a
copies
deep
it.
fake.
Yeah, and I think they toyed around with the idea of even her. One of the things, her going to a big server room with all these things and pulling out a bunch of cables. Yeah, because it was all the deep fakes things. I don't know if you've seen that in news, but
that's where they can very easily take a picture of anyone, map the face, and then put it onto the face of something else. So it's a big deal. They're taking like celebrities like Gal Gadot from Wonder Woman and putting her face in porn.
Yeah.
And it looked real enough to pass.
Or Nick Cage and like everything.
Yeah, Nick Cage.
And then I saw one where they put Carrie Fisher on the fake Princess Leia from Rogue One.
Yeah.
At the very end of Rogue One.
Or Harrison Ford in Solo.
Yeah. So I thought it was maybe going to be that situation thing. I'm like, that's interesting because that is a real world thing that I've seen people, kind of, there's some fears about that. It doesn't technically dive into that. But
it doesn't really go into what happened.
yeah, and I think that's the big disconnect for some people. And I feel like it should have went a little bit further because this film was so
pretty grounded.
Yeah, it wasn't unambiguous. You know, it was grounded, and so I think people were looking for a somewhat grounded answer.
Yeah.
And not that that's not a grounded answer. They maybe just want a little bit more of an explanation. But I also saw from writers or whoever, they said the reason they abandoned that was, I'm paraphrasing, and I believe I was kind of skimming it over because I just finished watching the film a little bit ago, that they were more worried about, again, what you took away from the film because, what's the main character's name? Is it Alice?
Yeah, Alice or Lola.
Because Alice, you know, she doesn't know exactly what it is, so that's not really important. All she knows is something was copying these people, and she managed to best it, you know.
Well, because there's the other element, too, of like the top cam girl and then her replica are going to do a video together.
Yeah.
And then do a video together and, you know, do stuff that she may not have done if it was her own account. And then there's, too, the element of like her mom and brother find out about stuff.
Yeah.
And then the blowout from that doesn't end up being that significant because her mom helps her get made up at the end to do another one.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But yeah, so I guess the implication is, so she goes to the guy's apartment that's watching the deep fake or watching the replica while she's there. Mm-hmm. And then she goes in and is talking to the replica and it doesn't recognize that they're the same person. And she's like, oh, who's your girlfriend? And stuff like that. So then what she does is she goes into the private chat room and convinces it to chat later and then gets into a game with it where the winner has to get whatever they want and then is eventually able to get the fake version to give her the credentials for the account. So she then logs in and deletes it. And her mom helps her get made up and cover like her broken nose and all of her bruises and stuff. So she puts on a wig and uses a different identity and name to create a new account and says like, well, if it happens again, I'll just make a new one. Mm-hmm. So it's basically she's getting back on the horse to, you know, ride that way and
you could
no
phrase
there.
that differently.
She's going to continue on with that game.
So, but I think the point is like, hey, this is something she's also passionate about because she was excited to get on top 50. Like the whole thing about not telling her mom, she claims was that
she wanted to wait until she was more
better
successful.
enough. So it wasn't just about the money. It was about her being really good at what she did. And at the end of the day, it seemed like something she enjoyed doing and so she wanted to get back to it. It wasn't just like, obviously after all that stuff, it didn't deter her. It was something she was passionate about.
Yeah. She was, maybe the wording I use, but she was, she was going to get back in the game regardless. And then she wasn't going to be stopped by any of this stuff. So it's it's one of those things where, like I said, like I do think in the next 10 years, because there's been demos Adobe has done where you can take from our podcast, somebody can get enough audio sample of anybody on our podcast to use algorithms and software to make it sound like we're saying anything.
Yes.
And then you double that with being able to get a facial map of someone from multiple images, and you can put that in any scene. It's not too far off before it's going to be impossible to believe video evidence. Because you could fake, a president saying anything you want, a celebrity, somebody you don't like. That's not that far off. And that is some of because like, was it the Rogue One where they had like the fake Princess Leia? Like that's millions of dollars of CG. And there's all these movies where they do stuff like that just takes all this money. And then people with these relatively cheap apps on their desktop level computers are able to pull off similar results.
Yeah. And a few years later, just a few years later
and
from that.
a few years from now, there'll be a smartphone app where you can replace anybody's face you want. And so there's all this stuff is not too far off. And this does play into that fear. And this is from the specific, instance of somebody who's a cam girl getting their identity stolen. But I think there's a lot of implications for how social media is going to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary to think about.
If it would have just even just been set in the future, like 3 or 4 years,
or just committed to the concept.
Just something like that to maybe where people could kind of go along with the ride a little bit more. I don't know what the direction should have been, but obviously some people had some massive issues with this, and I didn't walk away thinking it was a home run either, as much as I liked many elements of this film.
Yeah, I think it's just, it all hinges on, are you okay walking away from the movie at the end, just in like, just in your mind being like, oh, the point was she's not going to be deterred and she really wants to break through with this. And
which is a fine enough point.
It's almost like, like Rocky. He's going to keep fighting.
Yeah, but it's nothing. Yeah, again, it's nothing groundbreaking that you're thinking like, oh man, I've never thought about that before in life. Like, that's a common theme. Common thing people are. I think people do. So that's not, I think, impactful enough on its own to make up for any deficiencies people may have in the plausibility, what they think the plausibility of what actually happened.
I think the main thing that people come away from that like be either upset or okay is, the movie could also be supernatural. It could be a supernatural element where it's kind of a ghost in the machine type deal, and it's literally just a digital double that's taken over. It's kind of a doppelganger or something. So there's elements like that. It's not super clear. So, I think just it really hinges on, are you okay with it just being a metaphorical thematic ending and not giving you as much literal information? And I was okay with that. I think it maybe would have been more of a could have knocked it out of the park if there was a little bit more commentary about what all this means.
Yes.
But as is, it's still a cautionary tale about getting so intertwined and involved in, your online presence, because it is really, at the end of the day, an account you can delete. So anyone can delete. I mean, it's something that's on one hand, it's out there, like, because she goes and looks up clips from old episodes and stuff on some website. So on one hand, everything that's out there is out there forever, but it can also be gone in a second. So it's like this weird dichotomy. And two, just the element of having to build yourself back up from the start and start over again. So, interesting enough concepts. I just wish it had gone a little bit further with some of those and made those a little bit more explicit. But at the same time, you can't really judge something more from what I would want from it, more so than what it was. But it did make me think about stuff.
And it would turn it into a totally different thing, just because of the balance of it. I think is really well done as far as the grounded elements. But I'm very interested in seeing what they're, what they'll tackle next. And I hope they do continue to get some more work.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what type of, if they continue with Blumhouse, what type of work they get from,
I mean, too, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this group gets reached out to from Black Mirror. It's like, hey, at least the director, like, hey, would you like to come and work on this?
Yeah.
Because this is very much in line with the type of stories that show up on there.
Yeah, for sure.
There's even ones that have been similar to this on Black Mirror, just different, framing and characters. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap up our discussion of Cam. So the next episode we'll be discussing a little bit different take in technology. It's a found footage movie from 2008?
Decade
Cloverfield.
Ago.
Yeah, so we've done Cloverfield Paradox and 10 Cloverfield Lane, but this is the original Cloverfield that's on Netflix now, which is why we're doing it. And it's, a lot of these movies, you need to reevaluate them after you've seen it to see if it actually works as a real movie. So I thought it'd be a good time to do that since it's on Netflix. There's been the recent movies that have come out, and it's something we haven't covered yet. And it was something where it's like, okay, well, let's see how well this holds up. So the next episode will be Cloverfield, and we'll also talk about The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, a new Coen Brothers movie. It's on Netflix, but that'll be the next episode. So that'll bring this episode of the House of Israel podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.